Hi everyone, my name is Matias. Thank you for being here today. This workshop is going to be focused on one of the hottest topics today, which is NFTs. We're going to be talking about non-fungible tokens and how they can be used in virtual environments like virtual worlds, metaverses, and gaming environments. So I think if you were just here listening to our previous speaker, I think you already got quite a great overview of Bitcoin, right? So I'm not going to be talking about that. But very briefly, this is what we're going to be covering today. So yeah, we're going to be talking about this transition between moving into the concept from internet money to non-fungible tokens. We are also going to be talking about we're going to be leveling the ground for those that might have heard about non-fungible tokens but are not aware of what they are, or they do not still understand very well what are they. So we're also going to be talking about the characteristics of NFTs, why they are important and relevant for virtual environments today, aside from the applications that most of us already know, which are related to art. I will also be trying to demystify something that it's called, or what media has called recently, the NFT bubble, which is a term I particularly don't like to use in this case. And we are also going to be going then specifically into these virtual environments and trying to understand what are the new generation of NFTs, trying to break down into this programmability of NFTs, which I believe is particularly useful for gaming environments and metaverses. So, this is a very relaxed talk, so if you have any way to participate, just raise your hand, we can talk. I don't like to structure things. So, as you know, Bitcoin has become probably the synonym of internet money from, I would say, when it was created, 2008. So it has since served as a way for us to interact with money digitally in an entirely new way. With Bitcoin nowadays, it's not just people that are transferring money between themselves, it is also institutions that are using it as a treasury mechanism, and they are also, and it's also being used to hedge against inflation, as our previous speaker was talking about countries like where I'm from Argentina, so I'm very well aware of the concept of hyperinflation. And in particular in these countries, Bitcoin has become a great mechanism to hedge against that. So Bitcoin, what has done is incorporate this sort of scarcity in the digital money sphere. What do we have here? Does anyone know what it is? Like this? Yeah. So this is the piece. It's Gustav, yeah, claimed, and so far we had until recently we didn't have a way to authenticate this kind of art in digital environments. So whether it was physical art or digital art, you went to the internet, you found an image, and you didn't have a way to authenticate it. Yeah? So the metadata there was just random. You could alter it, and there was no way to prove that authenticity. Now, in 2014, we saw the first case of a non-fungible token being minted. It was by Kevin McCoy. It was this image, actually it was animated, And it was sold recently, I believe last year, at Sunrise for $1.4 million. Um, Now, this represented a great, I mean, although the image might not be super impressive, it has opened the way and it has introduced this idea of digital scarcity for unique assets, something that we hadn't seen until this moment. We had seen scarcity for Bitcoin, so you had each token and it could be interchangeable for another. Great. But in this case, with unique art pieces or music tracks, um, you couldn't. This particular scarcity for unique digital art, well, it was really a breakthrough. And it has become so far very, very useful in many different areas related to the virtual economy. We have seen so far how the creators economy have made use of these NFTs in the context of art, music, events, virtual land, and many others. And we're going to be covering that a little bit later today. So I just heard that someone in the audience just came and told me, is this for everyone? Is it going to be technical and too complicated? No. I always like to level the ground a little bit. So we're going to be just giving a brief introduction and a definition, which is very important for us to just understand. So NFTs are digital assets that link ownership to a physical or digital item encoded into the blockchain. And actually, it's a blockchain because although this market has been initially dominated by Ethereum, nowadays we're seeing an increasing wave of NFTs also on other networks, which are providing considerably cheaper fees for people to explore and
How do you basically define the link between an NFT and a real life object, as many brands will probably do in the future? Like, how do you make sure that this physical object is actually connected to this NFT?
Yeah, that's a great question. Actually, one of the best ways to do it is using NFTs to contain some data that links to that particular object. And make, in many cases, when we're talking about physical applications, those NFTs can be redeemable for the physical assets. And one interesting way of, or one interesting application of that was recently a case by, I believe it was Nissan in Canada. They have made an NFT auction of some of their top grade cars, where the NFT, the people that purchased those NFTs had access to the cars themselves later on, when they were already available in production. I believe that answered the question. Yeah, that's cool. So yeah, and so far, yeah, I wanted to give some examples, actually, not only from the virtual world, but also from the physical world, because it's now really interesting to see how these NFTs move beyond digital environments. So some of the cases where we are seeing NFT applicability is paintings, real life paintings, watches or high-end products that require certain level of authenticity. So if you're buying a $10,000 or a $20,000 watch, it is very important to understand that it's authentic. And NFTs can be a way to create that kind of authenticity, because, as you know, paper authenticity can be forged. But when it's in the blockchain, then you have a record of who owns what. Now, one of the other interesting cases are cards, or baseball cards, sports cards, but in any case, all kind of physical collectibles. We can be talking about magazines, comics books, yeah? And when we move to digital environments, or not, or I would say intangible, then we have new things. We have digital art. This is, well, a famous one by Beeple, probably the most expensive one NFT sold to date. I think it was 69 million. We are also having musicians using NFTs as an alternative to distribute their content. Why? Because the content goes directly to their fans. It's a new way for them to interact with their audiences. It's a new way to distribute their content without having to go through the regular channels, which are fee heavy. And another way, an interesting thing that I like, is virtual fashion. Fashion houses like Burberry, Louis Vuitton, Moncler, they have been, in the last year, they have all had initiatives to start dressing people not only in real life, but also their avatars. Because, as you know, metaverses are already here. And the more people use them, the more important we want to stand out in those virtual environments too. Now, how do you prove the authenticity of these digital items, NFTs? So yeah, to just sum up in this particular case, what makes NFTs particularly uh, relevant, I would say, it's non-fungibility, first of all, the idea that they represent something unique, right? You cannot exchange them for another NFT, they're not equal. Yeah, you can have different versions of the NFT. You can mint multiple NFTs, for example, and when I say mint, I'm saying creative, for those that might not be aware of that particular terminology. The other way, the other characteristic of them is rarity. Now, as you probably heard in the news, NFTs have become incredibly expensive, right? So as we just saw, that artwork by Beeple was sold for $69 million. $69 million. That you could have bought a very nice real painting in auction for that kind of money. So what made it so expensive? It's rarity. It's the idea that the scarcity of that particular asset. For example, one of the best ways to think about scarcity when we're talking about NFTs is thinking of the most popular collections. For example, Bored Apes or CryptoKitties. So you have a series of, for example, 10,000 different cats. They're just images of cats. But some of them have unique combinations of color, eyes, and other attributes that made them incredibly unique in this particular collection. And that's why some of them are so expensive. And then the idea that they cannot be divided. Unlike Bitcoin, NFTs are not fractional. You cannot buy 10% of an NFT, right? It's the same logic that applies to a concert ticket or an airplane ticket. You don't buy 60% of it. You need to buy the whole. Oh, so, in the past few months, especially during the first peak of Bitcoin in 2021, we started to, and after Bitcoin, did a little correction, the NFT boom, as we initially called it, kind of cooled off, right? So we saw a peak, then it cooled off. And then we started to hear from media the NFT bubble. Now, I particularly don't like this term, but that's okay. When I first heard of bubbles, the first thing I tend to think about, it's one of the most famous bubble examples in markets. It was the tulip mania in the 17th century. Um, and this actually teaches something very interesting. Um, Back in the time, how these bubbles, just understand and compare what is a bubble and what is not. Back in the time, these tulips became a symbol of wealth. Everybody wanted to have them. So there was incredible demand for these tulips. They became so expensive that you could buy a mansion for the same amount that you were paying for these tulips. People were going and taking credit to buy tulips, thinking that they could sell them for a profit and pay off their debts. Of course, this didn't last. Okay, in 1637, the market collapsed, and well, that didn't turn out very well. So, what teaches particularly this case, and I believe the empty shells that we've seen throughout history, is that if a high product, ultra expensive product, doesn't solve a real problem, it is likely a bubble. And this is the question that I make myself when people tell me the NFT bubble. Do NFTs solve a real problem? And the question for me is, yes, they do. So answering yes, there is a bubble, no. Because they do solve a problem, a very important problem. They solve the problem of authenticity. The authenticity that we struggled to have before in digital environments. Yeah. So just to understand a little bit of where we are standing in terms of market, here are some latest stats that I just put together. As we've seen, yes, there is definitely hype. It is a hype market. I believe that a major part in this hype is the increase in the price of Bitcoin. Yeah. But there is also another hype, the real hype that comes with the applications of this technology. When you have thousands, millions of artists locked at home for a long time, they start to experiment. And NFTs were a great way to experiment and find an interesting way to generate revenue as well. I'm not going to go too much into details, but you can see how immense this is. And just to give you a sense of how the market is distributed in terms of NFTs, collectibles stand for nearly 40% of it. But it's not just collectibles. We have sports, we have utility games and metaverses. And I would say these tiny parts today, game and metaverses, are likely to become one of the most interesting and most profitable applications for NFTs. In fact, here today we have several stands of game companies and metaverses working with NFTs already to incorporate them into their virtual environments. We're going to talk about that a little bit later. So yeah, just to continue, as you can see, the hype is still on. These are fresh, these are just in stats from the market. So the hype still continues, and despite the correction in the market, we still see an increasing amount of creators that are experimenting. So no, I don't call it the NFT bubble, I call it the NFT reality. I think that as it solves a real problem, it is not a bubble, it is a reality, it's a new reality. Then I would like to talk a little bit about, yeah, sure. So there might not be a bubble, true. However, with human nature, there's going to be a tendency for people to have that fear of missing out, the FOMO syndrome. And everyone wants to jump on the bandwagon, which could exaggerate its real market value or real value in other ways. And maybe that's why it gives the perception that there is a bubble. And that's maybe what people need to be careful of. We all want to know, we know, yes, this is real, it's not a bubble. But we want to jump in knowing that we're not jumping in at a time where the value is exaggerated or it's speculated and it's not real, and then it adjusts to a point where it feels like a crash. And so we're wondering if you know how you can guide us to knowing when it's exaggerated, or if you feel that yourself, if you agree with that. This is a very interesting question, and I think that the fact that we are having platforms that make it so easy for you to mint and to create NFTs makes a big part in that kind of fear of missing out from the creator side and also from the collectors. They see a huge influx of new art every day. So as a collector, how do you, let's say, clear the fog, right? Because you're going to have an enormous amount of NFTs which are not valuable at all. And that happens already. So how do you identify those pieces that are truly unique? One particular way is using something that we call on-chain auctions, and something that helps the artists and the creators or the businesses that are creating these NFTs conduct these auctions directly on their Prime ecosystems. So if you are within a game, then you can access those NFTs inside the game. Or if you are a famous painter, you have a website and you could conduct the auctions inside your website, so people know what they are buying. It's not just around or other artists that might not have any value at all. So that is one possible way. So yeah, coming back to the presentation, NFTs, I think it's very important to highlight here, they are not an isolated event in this digital evolution that we're seeing. They are part of the transition between Web 2 and Web 3. Now, for those that are not very much familiar with the concept of Web 2 and Web 3, here is a little bit, a short explanation of what is it. So Web 2 is based on centralized platforms, on monopolies, and they're highly regulated. Now Web 3, what we are moving into right now, on the other hand, depends largely, mainly, on decentralization. It's about putting user data, it's about putting financial back on the control of people. Now, of course, this is not an event that happens from one day to another. Decentralization, it is very, very difficult to achieve because it incorporates the idea that we do not need to give our data or our funds to someone to control. We need to learn how to do it ourselves. And that it's hard. That's why we had so many cases. I used to work before for financial services, and we had a lot of cases of people saying, oh, but I had a wallet and suddenly I lost it, and I lost my address and I don't have the face phrase, so how do I get them back? It's hard, So we still don't know very much how to manage our own security, our own data. It is hard, and it's a process. Now, in this particular context, NFTs and Bitcoin as internet money play a major role. This is how Web3 would look like, where you would have different layers, where you have peer-to-peer networks, and we are already seeing that with decentralized exchanges, right? Where you have a transaction layer, which of course it runs on internet money. Call it Bitcoin, call it USDT, or any other stable coin, whatever you prefer. They make transactions faster, digital, low fee, cross-border. And you have a programmability layer. And this is very interesting, and this is probably where we are headed in terms of NFTs. The programmability of them. Nowadays, I'm gonna go to that a little bit down this presentation. NFTs are a pillar of this particular process and transition to Web3. Now, it's interesting to understand what NFTs bring to the table. As you know, this presentation is about non-fungible tokens and virtual environments. So by virtual environments, as I said before, we're talking mainly about games, we're talking about metaverses, but we're also talking about our digital lives because that's what we live in right now, increasingly. So what NFTs bring to the table? Ownership. So when we are nowadays, when you are in games, you have in-game assets, right? So you have skins, you have a sword or a car, and these in-game assets provide you with certain utility within this digital environment. You can become more sophisticated, more powerful. It enhances your experience. Now, in the model that we live today and that we play today, these in-game assets are nothing beyond the game. You come into Fortnite, you use your V-Bucks, you buy something, that's all. It's worth nothing beyond that environment. Now, NFTs have the ability to change that, to give you real ownership. It doesn't belong anymore to the game developer. It belongs to you. And if the game developer has other games compatible, then you could take them with you if you're using NFTs, if you're using blockchain infrastructure for that. And that creates an enormous amount of new use cases when it comes to game mechanics. Another thing is the provable scarcity. So this in-game, as I was saying, we now can understand if, for example, this skin that I'm buying, or this sword that I'm buying, or this avatar belonged to someone before. It has a history. It has a record in it. Who it belonged to? Now it's mine, but before it was from, I don't know, a famous YouTuber that was playing with that. Now that's an interesting case. Then you can grab, if we're talking about blockchain-based assets, you can have a metaverse marketplace where people could start trading those in-game assets, creating this kind of layer for them to interact freely. And of course, with this idea of scarcity, which creates rarity, which creates value for these assets. As I was mentioning briefly before, it creates interoperability. Now, when your in-game assets are not focused on a central authority, I don't want to sound like a government official, but what we are doing is that you can create interoperability between games. right? And that is something very interesting. So you're playing Fortnite, you have something inside that game, but then you can move that asset to another game, which is compatible. That is also very innovative and very interesting. Yeah.
Do you see resistance from game developers in terms of interoperability because it could alter the theme or the story when they start moving assets?
Well, I would say that it depends entirely on the games. I think that we are seeing already a lot of game developers getting into this blockchain, using non-fungible tokens inside their structures. And as we move forward, most of them start to create games or spin-offs of their games. As you know, that usually games go, like a saga, so you have multiple of them. So in this case, you can create this sort of interoperability within one line of one particular game, or of course create a spin-off where you can have these different assets played, different roles in different game cycles. And the other point I want to highlight is immutability. So even if the game goes down, the assets, the value that you have there does not go away, because the value is stored in the blockchain. So the game can finish, it can come to an end, it can go down, it can fail, whatever. It can be blocked by the government. These things happen. But at the end of the day, the value that you have, it's yours. And you can take that value, put it back to a USDT, put it back to Bitcoin, put it back to whatever you want. It's yours. Now, I'm gonna get a little bit into this idea of the new generation of NFTs that are coming along. These were some of the examples that I was mentioning before. These are very famous NFTs, CryptoPunks, Bored Apes. The thing is that these NFTs, there's something missing from my perspective when it comes to virtual environments. These NFTs, they cannot change, they cannot mutate. So let's say that you bought a Bored Ape. That's it. There you have it. You can do anything with it. Yeah, it's part of what makes it startable. It's part of the scarcity of that asset. But it will be interesting if they can change also. And that is part of the NFT programmability that it's coming along. It's another example. This is a ticket, a very old ticket. But in fact, this was a very valuable ticket because it was sold in auction for a few $1,000s. Because tickets are collectibles too. And tickets, the problem with them in virtual environments is that they're single purpose. You buy a ticket, you use it, that's all. You put it on the trash, that's all. That's the only case you can have a ticket for. It's worthless after you use it. NFTs can change that. I work for a company called Wakatta. It's a new blockchain company, and what we're doing is we are creating new types of NFTs, particularly optimized for entertainment. And we are introducing three new types of NFTs, which are upgradable, time limited, and they are non-hash. And I'm going to get a little bit to those cases now. So What we have here is just a visual representation to illustrate these cases. One of the best examples for me to think about upgradable NFTs is about how artists collaborate. Artist collaboration has played a major role in modern art, especially in popular art. When it comes, let's just take an example, a very famous example that everyone knows. Andy Warhol, right? One of his most famous artworks is a picture of Marilyn Monroe. Now, he took that picture from a photographer, and he didn't pay any copyright. There were claims later, but that's another story. He just took that photo, changed it, put some color in it, made it very unique, and sold it for a lot of money. The photographer never saw any profit from that. Upgradable NFTs are a way for creators to regulate this kind of things. You could create an NFT which is upgradable, giving other artists, other people the ability to overwrite that original piece, and you benefit from that with royalties. It creates a layer 2 of artist collaboration in this creators economy. Time-limited NFTs, on the other hand, are particularly useful in virtual events. Increasingly, we are moving, as you would know, the pandemic before, and now because it's just cool, we're seeing major events go virtual. So you have festivals like Tomorrowland now preparing their shows in virtual setups using state-of-the-art VR technology and so on. And in these particular cases, it is very interesting. We were recently approached by them, and they were interested in how to enable certain mechanics with the virtual tickets. You can now take a virtual ticket, make it an NFT, allow users to trade that ticket in secondary market, and once they use it, when it expires, the ticket, it's a collectible. Now let's say that it was the first appearance of your favorite artist, of a very famous artist, a very exclusive show in a virtual setup. That might be worth a lot down the road, and it's yours. Now you can prove it. Non-hash NFTs, it's something that is particularly useful for physical applications, as we were talking in the beginning. It's about basically nothing, not rocket science here, but it's very innovative concept. It's basically putting a text container within the smart contract, and usually use it for cases of data management. Now, in the automobile industry, you could use it, for example, to have a record of the driver, link it to the vehicle, understand whether that vehicle passed the regulations required every year, whether there were certain maintenances, certain crashes or not, accidents, and that creates transparency in secondary markets. I think most of us have been aware of this kind of people faking records and so on. Well, this could be a way for them to create transparency in this sense. And the fact that they are becoming upgradable, it also creates a way for government officials or companies to upgrade and manage that data within the NFT. This particular solution is built on Substrate, and we decided Substrate is the technology framework, the same used for Polkadot, one of the most popular networks nowadays. And it creates, there are many ways, you know, when we are here, I heard a lot of people coming and saying, well, but why you chose Polkadot and not other networks like Solana and so on? All valid questions. This was a technology decision. But at the end of the day, what we really liked about Polkadot was their focus on interoperability. Because we really like this idea, and we are true believers that interoperability, without interoperability, you cannot operate in this modern environment. It is particularly, as I was saying before, useful in gaming metaverses and this new reality that we live in. Well, this enables a lot of technical things which are particularly superior to what we came to believe. Was useful for us at first. Low fees for us, it was something that when you're working with games or metaverses that rely heavily on microtransactions, you cannot have a user minting an NFT for $100+. They need to pay very low fees, otherwise it doesn't work. Another thing is the speed. We live in an instant gratification economy. I get crazy when the browser takes like more than 2 seconds to find my search results. It's just irritating. And yeah, so we need to create, it's a very important part of creating this very sleek, very smooth user experience for digital environments. So you cannot have a network where you need to sit and wait and be nervous. Oh, is it this? This is not. No, it needs to be instant, and that's why this solution was particularly useful for our case. And as I was mentioning, this idea of interoperability. What a hard word, right? Yes, as interoperable, we have a chance to be part of this huge ecosystem, which is talked about. And also build bridges with other networks. Yeah? Like Ethereum. Why not? Everyone loves it when you see it. This is basically just to give you a glance of the target industries that we can serve in this particular, with this particular solution that we have launched. Our goal for businesses and creators is to use blockchain and to use NFTs to power up virtual economies with new mechanics, empower and protect users, give them, put their data back on their side, put their assets and their value back on their side, on their management, and add new monetization streams for them as users. You have new monetization streams if you have user-generated content, or as businesses, you can also launch exclusive NFTs or find new ways to incorporate them into your metaverse or in-game structure. And creators, on an individual basis, they also have new opportunities. They can create collaborations, as we were mentioning before. And collaborations go far beyond than the visual collaborations that I was mentioning with the example of Andy Warhol. This can be also used in the context of music. We are seeing a very high interest from musicians in the NFT space. Why? Because it solves the complex process of artist collaborations When you see, using my truck to create a remix, it's a complex process. There are very complex a legal backlog of, copyrights, distribution rights, and so on. Now, if that track is an NFT and it's upgradable, another artist could take it and mix it. It is that simple. And when that artist distributes it, you get royalties. It makes it a lot easier. Another way to interact with your fans. We've seen rappers like Lil Pump. I'm not much of a rap guy, but yeah, we've seen a lot of artists, large and not so large, incorporate these NFTs as a way to engage with their audiences. Cards, collectibles, Grimes also. She sold, I think, for $6 million some digital art. Impressive. So yeah, and I was mentioning this part of coming back to the question about how to differentiate when you have marketplaces like Rarible, OpenSea that have this huge influx of new art every day, new NFTs. How do you differentiate? It's very hard. So for high quality projects, for high quality artists maybe, for products with big communities, it might be a solution to just conduct these auctions, conduct this marketplace within your own structure, within your website, within your game, within your metaverse. You do it in a very smooth way. And on-chain auctions create this transparency. You cut down Rarible, you cut down OpenSea. We're trying to create a decentralized reality, but at the same time, we are still relying on certain third parties. So I just wanted to give you one example. Wakatta is part of a company called Sensorium Corporation, and this same company is developing a metaverse, Sensorium Galaxy. It is an entertainment-focused metaverse, and that is why we came, first of all, with the idea of Wakatta, because the metaverse was supposed to run its virtual economy on top of the Ethereum blockchain. Now, when we thought of that in 2018, we thought, yeah, Ethereum is the way to go. It's a no-brainer. And then we realized, no, it's gonna kill our user experience because nobody wants to mint for $100+ of fees. So we decided to come up with our own layer one solution. And then we thought, hey, this is actually pretty good. Let's market it as a standalone solution. And that's how Wakatta came to life. And I'm going to teach you, I'm going to show you, better said, how we are planning to use Wakatta infrastructure, regardless of Wakatta in this case, how we're planning to use NFTs within the metaverse. Just to give you a glance of that, the Sensorium Galaxy, it is the first integration that we're going to be doing early next year. And for them, we're going to be enabling a few things. Digital currency, which is already available, but it's Ethereum based, and it's going to migrate to this new blockchain. Collectibles and tickets using this new innovation of time limited NFTs. We're also going to have the in-platform marketplace so that users can exchange their assets, because now they can be valuable. They have a scarcity. They have an avatar. It's unique. It has value, and you can exchange it. And another thing, and this sounds a little bit sci-fi, I think, NFT-powered digital immortality. Now this is interesting, right? So why digital immortality? One of the things that really makes Sensorium Galaxy stands out as a product itself, as a metaverse. It's a new concept that we've seen very recently in movies. We don't have any NPCs that are scripted. All of them, they are AI driven. So when you interact with them, when you talk to them, you're talking with AI. There are no scripts. We're using one of the most advanced conversational AI so that you can have conversations with these unique virtual beings for hours on very complex topics, and you don't get a single repeated answer ever. Just again, to recap here, Sensorium Galaxy is a metaverse. It's bringing high quality content, mixing it with advanced social experiences and mechanics, and creating this cross-platform digital metaverse. And these are some of the things that, well, you're going to be seeing later. So far, the first virtual world that we're going to be launching, it's a world dedicated to electronic music. And we have signed we have partnered some of the most relevant DJs today. We have David Guetta, Armin Reviewer, Patos. These all guys, what we are doing is we're 3D scanning them, we're recording their motion capture and taking their shows in a fully immersive experience. It's not a 2D thing that you get into the metaverse, you see other people, but you see like an hologram of this show. They are really there. They're photorealistic. It's Unreal Engine 4, and it's AAA quality. And for this particular world and environment, you're gonna have metaverse NFTs, you're gonna have metaverse currency, and it's all blockchain based. So that the value that you create there, it's all on your side. This is a little bit a visual on how it's gonna work. Now, this is also the power of AI in metaverses. We are giving avatars, virtual beings, better said, the ability to create content on their own, based on your preferences, based on what they learn from you. That's pretty awesome in terms of creator economy. Not only you can create content yourself, like you're gonna have certain tools to create music, generative music, art, dances, but also you're gonna enable these virtual beings that belong to you to create content on your behalf. And that content will also be NFTs. And all of this content, which is continually being generated, is going to a marketplace. Of course, you have the option to list them or not in this metaverse marketplace. But you can allow and trade them if they are unique enough and benefit from it. So it's a new stage in what we call digital creation. So in this particular case, NFTs for virtual environments are a way for metaverses, for games, to co-create, move aside from the idea of users as just money bags, and let them also profit. We're seeing some track on this in games, like with the play to earn model. Robo Race, it's a second integration that we're going to have on Wakatta, our blockchain, and it's also a metaverse, a different kind. It's focused on racing. They are creating their basic technology is AR, augmented reality, so that they can make enhanced racing tracks. They are gamifying this racing to a new level. It's not just about being fast, it's also about obstacles. This is a little bit how it will look like, and this is for real. This is in Las Vegas. Now, NFTs, these are real cars in real racing tracks trying to hit and meet certain targets in digital. So it's a combination. It is this mixed reality. It's really, really cool. So yeah, what we're seeing is that we're going to be merging. We're going to be with one step in the next few years. We're going to be with one step into this virtual world and one step in the real world. And NFTs are in the middle. They're reaching both worlds. NFTs in this particular case, it's about influence. It's about giving the user the possibility to influence the race or the mechanics in these particular mechanisms. With, for example, using social tokens or using NFTs that want to be placed within the racing track. Thank you.